actually, when you are transitioning or you are flipping, I think you don't really know what you're up for, but
Yeah.
at least you need to be open to think about, okay, what would you like to keep? I mean, that's pretty engineering driven thinking, but what do you like to keep? What do you want to stop? And what do you want to start new?
Welcome to the Career Flipper Podcast. I'm your host and fellow career flipper, Jenny Dempsey. You know, this whole thing started because after getting laid off and reevaluating my entire career path, I was really curious. How do people actually make huge career changes, or flips as I like to call them? And how do they keep going when things get really messy and really difficult? That curiosity led me here, to having real conversations with people from all kinds of industries and places around the world about their career journeys. So if you're in the middle of a career change or know someone who is, share this with them and hit subscribe for new episodes every Thursday. Okay, so as I mentioned, I got laid off from my corporate role, and during that time, I struggled to find a new full-time job. So I got resourceful. I started to flip furniture I found on the curb, and I also used my tech skills to take on small-scale consulting roles, one of which was with Modulus, a project led by Adam Harms, who has this awesome vision of building community within the composites and materials space. You know, stuff like airplanes and wind turbines, and even baseball bats and bicycles, the stuff that they're all made out of. I had never worked in that industry before, and it really opened my eyes to some cool stuff. And today's guest, who you'll meet in a moment, was a big part of that community. And even though Modulus is no longer around, it did what it was meant to do: bring people together. And I had the opportunity to represent Modulus with the team at the largest materials and composites industry event, JEC World, in Paris, France, last year. Yannick Willemin, who's based out of Zurich, Switzerland, has spent 20 years in the composites industry. He's got an inspiring story about navigating career changes, embracing that change, and finding growth even when things don't go according to plan. In our conversation, he shares how his passion for sports drove him into the composites industry in the first place, and how he's navigated his career change by staying open to new opportunities and building a really strong network. He also talks about how your skill sets stay valuable even when you're stepping into something completely new, and how coaching is becoming more accepted in the business world. I love his perspective on networking too. It's about building real, authentic relationships, not just collecting LinkedIn connections. And a little insider scoop, while we don't talk about it in the episode, he is also known to flip some furniture himself and even properties on the side. Definitely a talented guy. So if you're thinking about switching things up in your career or just trying to figure out what's next, this episode is packed with insights and advice. Let's get into it now. So Yannick, where is your favorite place to eat in Paris? Let's just start right there. Let's talk about food before we kick off everything.
Actually, my preferred place to eat is called Comme chez Maman. So it means as at home, as Mama cooks. And this is in the Quartier des Batignolles. So it's not a touristy district. My sister used to live there. There's a lot of families, let's say below 40, and very lively, lots of bars, good small restaurants. You feel just like at home and eat typical cuisine, nothing over fancy, also pretty affordable. Just feels like I'm back home in Paris. Also now I don't live in Paris anymore.
You know, that is how we met in person at the JEC conference in Paris last year. But we knew each other from an online community in the materials and composite space where you have worked for many years. And Yannick, tell everyone a little bit about you and what you've done in that space and how long you've been in there and what it is you're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, indeed, as you said, I mean, we have met in Paris, and I have been now in the composites field for 20 years, if I think back to my engineering days. So yeah, I studied engineering mechanics, materials, specialized in composites, started in composites, and stayed in composites, and will most probably work in composites even next year. So that's certainly the constant in my life, which is far from constant. But yeah, I mean, what brought me to composites? Probably high performance sports, because I come from a competitive cycling background. So I used to sit on composites before knowing how you can do composites. And and then I learned what is in the frame, what are those materials, and yeah, got the sports passion linked to the engineering passion, and yeah, and then moved also out of the sports field in terms of engineering, but at least I always stayed with this composites material, which is pretty broad from a definition point of view. And yeah, I guess that's what's interesting is actually, although it seems constant because composites are composites, it brings you to all kind of areas. So I've been in automotive, high performance automotive. I've been in steel plants because you need graphite electrodes to melt steel. I've been in manufacturing technologies. Yeah, many things brought me from corporate to startup, etc. As I'd say, a great vehicle to start a journey through life.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And that's really fascinating that you took your love of sports and that became your career and was kind of that golden thread that was like woven through it all. And once you learned how things were made, it sounds like there was nothing holding you back. You went to different industries and learned about all sorts of other types of composites. And so now, Yannick, what are you up to? What is the career flip and the transition phase for you at this point? Because I know you have that going on.
Indeed, what I'm up for. Actually, when you're transitioning or you're flipping, I think you don't really know what you're up for, but
Yeah.
at least you need to be open to think about, okay, what would you like to keep? I mean, that's pretty engineering driven thinking, but what do you like to keep? What do you want to stop? And what do you want to start new? And obviously, composites is a solid base if you have 20 years in the field. I'm most of the time being linked with networks. So it also gives you some trust or some confidence that there is more than just you around, because obviously it's always feels like, okay, you are jumping somewhere and you don't know where to land.
Yeah.
Also, at the end you will always find some soft spots. At least you should be naive enough to think about that. And also, I think having a network is great to just in these moments where you feel like I'm not gonna do it, or it's gonna fail. You know, even before you start, it's gonna fail, which is also pretty counterintuitive. But then having people saying, "Hey, come on, just there is this opportunity here and the other one there. Just give it a try," and then you go back into your fighting spirit, like in the competition, in the races back in the times in sports. And I guess this solid network, a field where you are already in. So I mean, flipping. Some people would say, I mean, if you stay in the same field, you're not flipping because you still have kind of a pillar or a fundament. But then, really going there and building up your trust, your confidence, obviously, which can change from day to day. I mean, there is some days you wake up and you are making your financial projections and nothing is adding together. And then you have two discussions and you are smiling and you're super happy because the people are encouraging you and even giving you other contacts or opening you some opportunities. So what I certainly learned, but that's true in general for high performance, is sharing is very important, be it positive or negative. I mean, we used to see very positive things online because we all want to shine and we don't want to cry in front of public. But on the other side, being very open and honest, even and not thinking it's about weakness, showing that you feel bad or you have a down day or whatever, is rewarding because people actually look for that. I mean, not from a negative point of view, but that, you are just a human and you are not just an unemotional person going through all difficulties like it's nothing. And really, and having this still, I guess you need this drive. So if you trust in your network, in your experience, then it's really about fighting some luck. Obviously, there's always some luck.
Yeah.
And just starting. I mean, I would say getting into the movement, starting, and let it roll a bit. Sometimes it's frightening because you don't know where to, but it feels good when you can just keep it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a good point. You bring up a few things that I want to touch on. First one is, when you're in the same industry for so many years, for example, you've been here 20 years doing this, and how sometimes it can not seem like a flip when you stay in the same industry. And I love that you brought this up, because even when because there's been a couple other folks on the show and I've talked to with similar situations where they were working as employees for corporations in one industry, and they saw that there was a problem out there that they wanted to solve, or they saw something that they could do really well. So they started their own company in the same industry. And in my mind, that is a flip, because you're changing, your role within the industry. You're changing a lot of aspects in your life. And you have this knowledge and skill set. And the other thing that I'm learning about career flips too, whether or not you stay in the same industry or you do something completely different, your skill set remains so intact and so valuable that the things that you learned, for example, one woman worked in corporate marketing and now she runs a pet waste management company, but her marketing, which is so drastically different, right? But and she actually was in the materials space for like helicopters and composite space for helicopters, but now she's doing a pet waste management company. And I find this so fascinating because her skill set of marketing and the knowledge of how, interacting with people, networking, just as you were talking about, it all led her to the success of this other company. And so I wanted to touch on that a bit when we talk about skill set and the things of, we are changing our careers from whether we're working for someone or starting our own business, but there's a lot of things that we still have to shift, belief systems in ourselves, responsibilities, or things like that. Has that been anything for you as you're kind of like navigating this, career transition for yourself as you kind of make a pivot, even though it's in the same industry? What has that been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's a good point. And I will come back to the topic, okay, same industry or not same industry, because I think that's very interesting also from maybe reputation point of view. Because basically, okay, I have been in corporate about 13 years and I moved to a startup. So some consider it being already a flip because you stay in the same industry, but obviously in a different setting.
Yeah.
And then now the next step will probably be moving from a startup to having an own business. And then it feels sometimes more difficult if you stay in the same industry and you change your environment or the setting, because you have all this legacy. And legacy is powerful because it gives you fundament and a lot of trust because you basically know where you are. On the same side, you might sometimes think about what may I lose what I was building up all this time. And because back in the time 2013, it was not a complete flip because I was doing that in parallel, but that was pretty a big project. I bought a house in Marrakesh, completely revamped it as a hotel, and it was run as a hospitality business. And that's very different, but actually I had less thoughts about this than the flip now in the same industry, because that's basically, if it fails, of course it would fail because you have no clue. And of course it doesn't fail because you take, and coming back to you take basically you experience, you take your traits, your qualities, and you bring them into another field, and there is no reason you cannot find, for example, customers which have similar taste. I mean, you are not running a hotel with 1 million rooms, so you just need a few people not too different to you, and then the hotel will work. And therefore, sometimes when I think, but it was the same in sports, once you have reached a certain level, you are also training based on fear because you don't want to lose your position.
Right. Ooh.
While when you are starting, I mean, I flipped now from racing a bike to triathlon. That's not too difficult. But then from triathlon to boxing, then you have no legacy. So I mean, if you go to the first fight or to the first training and you suffer, you are unknown, so you don't care. If you do the same in the field you are since 20 years, you feel bad because somehow you are judged. At least, I mean, it's always your own perception. I mean, that's the tricky point. Often you are not as judged from the others than you judge yourself.
Yeah.
And that's where you need to share also what you feel, because only when you get the feedback that it's not the case, you say, okay, I mean, I'm making my life harder myself than it is for real.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. And it kind of goes back to the idea of networking and how you were mentioning earlier, kind of showing your true self online, the happy and the not so happy. And, I worked in the customer experience startup space for 20 years as well. And I honestly had a lot of fear putting myself out there and saying that I'm pivoting because of exactly what you said, those kind of expectations that we put on ourselves of like this legacy. I saw myself in a certain way and I thought that that's how others saw me and that what I was doing might not be well received or respected because I've been doing this 20 years. I should just keep doing it. And sometimes, like you mentioned, it's our own perception. It's the pressures that we put on ourselves. But when we have a really strong network of people that are supporting us and all of the ups and downs, we may not have that same response from others as we do for ourselves. And sometimes working through that in our own minds can be challenging. And it sounds like maybe is that something that you ever feel like right now as you're kind of like figuring out the next step? Are you able to kind of put yourself out there and share the things that you're learning, but also the things that maybe aren't working out? Even though with all of this experience and the legacy, like what has that been like?
I mean, it's certainly not a constant. Some days you're more open. Some days you try to be more bullish, and you just say, that's my plan, and that's gonna work, and that's step 1, 2, 3. So very organized. Maybe I mean then it's not natural enough, but you are trying to fence it. And some other days, but I guess, I'm convinced what is very important is really to share it with a lot of people, because first of all, even if you share your thoughts and what you want to do in the future, it already gives you, I mean, you need to commit somehow, isn't it? It's like, okay, some people like to write what they want to do. And I would say writing is already a commitment because you can read it again and again and again. But then sharing it is even more, because basically people might ask in 2 months, okay, how has it been? I mean, you told me that. Have you moved forward? Okay, where are you? And of course, if you say, I thought about it and it was not a good idea, I found another activity to do, then, I mean, they will not judge you too much. But I think, really sharing and collecting these feedbacks. Obviously, as there is always people telling you, you should not do that. You have a family and you should find a proper job in a big corporate and just find a work-life balance, whatever it means for different people. And but most of the people will just say, do what you think you want to do, and you can only have this answer if you really share and you're open. And of course, there is those friends you call and say, you know what, I mean, I slept for hours, I am down, I think everything will crash.
Yeah.
And and
Yeah.
then those are when they pick you up somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. The strength of that network. You're definitely, you are a big community builder. You are a connector. Do you have advice for people listening right now who may be considering a pivot, whether it's in the same ministry or a different one, of how to network in a real way, not a salesy way, not in a, in a real authentic way, just as you do? Like, how do you start that when you might be moving to something different? How do you put yourself out there and make these connections to build that network to lean on and learn from?
Yeah, I mean, in my case, obviously, I built that since 15 years. It was really a decision, and I thought having diploma will not be enough. At least for me, I don't feel it's enough. I need to start building that, and not with the expectation that it will help me directly, but with, the first thought, and you already used the word several times, learn. And I'm a big learner, and I think that's important, because if you are open to learn, then you can adapt. And if you can adapt, you can basically do whatever you want, and then you can flip. And it's just like, I like to relate to the chameleon, because it's always the same animal. But, you can be like, today I'm with more political people around Paris in a delegation. And yesterday I was speaking about reticulation of thermoplastic composites. So just having different interests, and where you have not promoted officially, you can learn. And then it's about, sometimes just sitting and listening, at least in the past, I was often in some circles. I have no clue what they are telling about, but after 3 times, you have no clue what they are telling about. For a few hours, you just have a bit more clue, and you can start speaking with the people. Really be open, because if you want to start, you need, of course, to go out. If you stay behind the computer, of course you can connect online, but I really believe in the power of having this kind of bonding, this social bonding. It's easier when you meet the people. And there's tons of ways. Either through sports or meetups, or even industrial associations. Just find ways, and then it's just like a rolling ball. Once you start to enjoy this interaction, you will always find a way to mingle with different groups. And then after a while, you see how there is dots connecting. We had a chat. Okay, we know a common person by because at the end, there is a few billions people on the earth, but through bigger networks, you just happen to be able to approach people in very different fields. Might help if you are flipping, and you can call somebody, say, because usually if you call somebody on a sales matter, people are reluctant. You get tons of requests per day, but if you tell them, you know what, I want to change my career, I'm afraid of what I'm doing, people, because you are so honest and genuine, they will really pick up the phone and say, hey, let's call on the weekend even. I'm happy to hear what you're up for. Maybe I can support, maybe not. But really, let's say, being open, really being provocative in looking for networking, and then being open to learn. So sometimes it's better to just shut up and listen for a while, and then try to get the same colors in the environment as a chameleon would do. And then you can still move to another room and get another color.
That's a great way to put it. And it's so true. It's so true. The more that we listen, the more we ask questions, and we get so much out of that. And that is how we can build those relationships over the span of years and years, whether or not we stay in that industry. And I think that is so important for us as humans, as humans just wanting to connect with others. But for us to learn and grow and continue to like know that there's so much out there and there's help out there if we need it. And also that we're available for that if others need that too. They know it's reciprocal. And so, Yannick, there's so much, with community building and knowing what you love about being in an industry. So why is it that you are making the pivot that you're making? What prompted you to make the shift?
I could say I was prompted. So at least, no, I guess in this case, it was really like not an own decision. Also, I mean, I have lots of ideas in the back of my mind for a while, also doing some side gigs here and there, because just to taste the waters a bit. But yeah, in this case, I mean, typical startup mode. Okay, things are not going the way as planned, and okay, you just it gets provoked, which is fine. And I guess that's also a topic which is interesting when you are calling people and you say, oh, you are setting up something new, and people say, oh, why is a decision? And being very open and telling the people, okay, I mean, basically it was not a decision. I mean, it was not my decision. But I mean, I cannot control it, so I don't care too much. I'm not emotional about that. Just like in sports, I mean, you train hard for some situations. You are in a race. The race, the dynamics is different. Then either you still want to win, or if you think about what happened, you're already behind the pack. So in this case, okay, you cannot control it. Accept it. Learn from it. I mean, don't really don't delete it, but look forward. What can you control? And from day one after the decision, you can start crafting your mind around some blurry ideas. And then, of course, from dialogue to dialogue, conversation to conversation, and also hours of sleep, because we process a lot while sleeping. So that's actually a pretty active phase. If you think about shaping something, you should sometimes also give more sleeping hours to it. But all this together, you start from a blurry constellation to, okay, some things stay blurry, some others aggregate nicely, and that should be the core where you should focus. And you cannot start a multinational company within a night, but if you have a strong core, it's still place to grow over time, if that's something you wanted to. And so really, that was the launch of, okay, what shall I do? What could I do? And now in movement, correct.
Yeah, you're currently in it. So you had a situation happen and it didn't work out, and you didn't hang on to that. You're just like, this is what it is. I'm moving on. I have ideas. Some are bigger than others, and you gave yourself the care that you needed. You got sleep, and then you were thinking more and more about what you were going to do, and you just were like, all right, I got these ideas. I'm just gonna go for it. And now you are in the, would you call it early stages? Would you call the middle stages? Where would you say you're kind of at with things right now?
No, I have a pretty solid idea. So about the what, the how, of course, is related at the beginning. And you need to get things signed. I mean, it's always a time between soft and hard commitments, and then of course there is, as usual, delay in decision making. Or at least you speak with lots of people, and people say, "Oh, that might be interesting," but for mid 2025, which first you say, "Okay, I mean, I don't really care because I need to survive the first 6 months to make it till then." But then it's also good to know, okay, it's not just a short-term thing. So, because I mean, you need to fill with hard commitments to have at least a base to start, because someone you need to start. And if it's a business, it should also be financially at least worth it, because you need to build it up over time. But I get that's more the phase now. It's I know what, the how might be a bit still blurry, and now it's really getting the how, let's say, sharp by hard commitments, and then also focus, because at the beginning you are going pretty broad in the network, and I guess it's important also here to listen, to learn, because you might have your idea, and then might be that actually you discover a new field which you didn't think about.
Mm-hmm.
So because the topic of high performance, for example, is interesting because I have both the point of view from, I would say, corporate or business side and the sport side. And actually it's very similar because at the end it's human. It's human beings struggling. But the way to approach it in sports and business is very different.
Mm-hmm.
Say sports has a bit of an edge here because it's more accepted that if you train every day your body for some specific sport, you should also train your brain. That's accepted in the last few years. Yeah. People are really speaking about it, and professionals that, yes, they face struggles mentally and they have a mental coach and they spend even an hour or two training their brain per day. And in business, they are coaches, but you don't speak about it. I mean, it's still more ego than sharing openly that somebody's supporting you. But but I guess that's somewhere where that's another field where I could explore. I'm always having these conversations with, okay, that's nothing to do with composites. Despite being high performance, okay, you could put it under the title of high performance and saying, okay, you are bringing high performance into the brain. But yeah, that's certainly more a passion topic, but could develop into something. I mean, just like you started speaking about flipping.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you see the business world maybe benefiting from some of that? You know, like you mentioned in high performance sports with that, the coaching and the mindset shifting. Do you see, even though people aren't really talking about that now, or there's a stigma attached to, oh, you have a coach or this and that, like, do you see that being something down the road that could really help a lot of people with their career paths, whether or not, you know, they own a business or not? Do you see that being something that could potentially be more mainstream at some point? Or do you think it's kind of in a place where right now, because of how the stigma is of asking for that help, maybe it's not necessarily as important? Where do you kind of land with that?
I'm convinced it will pick up. And because you already see the interests. I mean, it's always a bit hidden behind fancy topics sometimes. So you see that. I mean, I happen to know quite some sports professionals. When they retire, they are often speaking at corporate events. So you see there is an interest, a clear interest to learn from experiences like that. That means that yourself, you can project. And obviously, not the entire company is deciding who is speaking, but usually it's really interesting for most of the people in the audience. So the next step would be, okay, how can you really apply these principles to yourself and then to share that? And here, I guess corporates, it's more difficult because it's often an entrenched kind of organization, and nobody wants to break it. Also, nobody's holding it for real. You know, it doesn't belong to anybody. It's not written in stone, but it's kind of it's very strange how it's perpetuating. But no, I really see that. It would certainly benefit. People are more and more open. I mean, you see all corporates try some programs with, okay, share or beat a number or a box or whatever kind of workshops. But to the point where you could basically, at the same level, then you learn. I mean, you have all these programs where you keep having trainings over your lifetime, that you really go into this maybe having your own coach, but then it's maybe too much to ask. But at least to have the possibility to discover that and then decide for your own. Just like sports, I mean, you can decide for your own if you take your sneakers twice a week and you go for a run, and it certainly doesn't harm.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you call a mental coach, or you meet somebody and you speak a bit about challenges and what you just want to share.
Yeah. No, that's such a good point. And that really leans into the whole reason I started this podcast was simply because no one was talking about certain things, and there wasn't any specific like career change coach or any type of really, there wasn't much available. And I knew that I wanted to learn something, and I couldn't figure out how to learn it. But I also knew that I felt very uncomfortable and kind of alone. Like I just felt very isolated with this new path that I was choosing. So the fact that, taking the conversations into a place where, I'm recording them and putting them out there was honestly a very selfish ploy for myself to connect with people and learn and to create the resource that I wish I would have had when I started this, and to be kind of come, I consider every single guest on the show a coach for me. And for everyone listening, it has become a resource exactly like that. It has become a way for us to all learn from one another. And I want to tie it back to the networking piece of like, yeah, we're networking, we're chatting, but we're in the learning piece, we're learning from one another. The things that you're experiencing and the way that you're able to carve the path you're in the direction you want to go, um, is a very motivating opportunity for me to look into, and also everyone else listening. And I think if we all kind of look into the way, like, what would we create, what tools or resources would we want to create for ourselves to have helped us through some hard time, and whether or not we actually do it. But like, I did it. I took this in and I was like, this has become a way to connect. It's become a way to learn. It's become a way to get curious, and also to just think about things different. And it's not perfect. It doesn't have to be the best thing out there. But the one thing you said, Yannick, you just have to take the step. You just have to take that first step, and you just have to do it. And then you kind of figure it out from there. And it sounds like you're in that place right now where you're like, all right, I know what it is, but the how, we're figuring it out. And I think that is a really important piece, that you don't always have to have everything so strict and planned out. It can kind of be the blurry and, with the things that are a little bit more concrete. And every step we can choose, oh, this worked. No, oh, this didn't work. And just as you mentioned with sports, you train for it, mind, body, spirit, all the things, and you just go and you do it. And that's really motivating and really inspiring for myself to hear, and for, I'm sure, many people listening right now as well. And if you had a piece of advice, kind of like, someone who might be in that phase where they're also, trying to figure it out, maybe they do or they don't know the what yet. Do you have any advice for someone who might be trying to figure it out, something that they can kind of hang on to as they're working through all of the ups and downs? What advice would you give them?
And very simple, reach out. I mean, there is